Welcome back to the Graham Sibbald Podcast. My name is Jorja McAndrew and I will be your host on this week's episode. Today we're speaking all things external wall insulation, insulation techniques, benefits and how to find out what the best solution is for you. So sit back, relax and enjoy this week's episode of the Graham Sibbald Podcast about external wall insulation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Welcome to the latest Graham and Sibbald podcast. We are joined today by Andy Thomson, who is a partner in Building Surveyor at Graham and Sibbald, based within the firm's Glasgow office. Good morning, Andy. How are you today?
Hi, Jorja. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. So as always on the Graham and Sibbald podcast, we like to start by you introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your role at Graham and Sibbald.
I joined G&S in 2012, so I'm now in my 9th year with the firm. As you said, I'm a partner in the Building Surveying department in the Glasgow office. I'm generally responsible for providing the full range of professional building surveying services to a range of clients across the UK. So it generally includes undertaking all types of building surveys, such as pre-acquisition building inspection reports, technical inspection reports, schedules of condition, schedules of dilapidations, and also managing survey teams undertaking stock condition surveys. So a main aspect of my work is undertaking the role of contract administrator for clients, and in this role we manage refurbishment, repair and new build projects from initial concept and feasibility stage right through to the completion of the project, including for all works in between such as procurement and tendering, project management, quality control and cost control. So examples of recent projects where I've provided the contract administration service for clients are an internal office refurbishment of about £800,000, window and door and kitchen replacement scheme for a housing association, re-roofing works, and of course an external wall insulation project to multiple residential properties.
Amazing. So lots going on. But today we're going to talk about external wall insulation and installation. So what is external wall insulation and why is it installed, and what is this installation process?
Well, external wall insulation is typically abbreviated to EWI, so I'll probably say that more often to keep it short.
I'll be joining you on that as well.
Is where an insulation board is fixed out to the outside face of the external walls of the building. The board's then generally provided with a render coating system to provide a waterproof finish. So over a third of the heat loss in a property occurs through the external walls, and by providing insulation to the walls, this will significantly improve the thermal efficiency of the property, which will in turn make the home warmer, reduce heating costs and also reduce carbon emissions. So external wall insulation is usually applied to non-traditional constructions such as no-fines concrete construction, where the external walls are a solid wall with no cavity. However, you can also apply EWI in other forms of construction, including cavity brickwork. So in the example of a previously rendered solid-walled residential property, the process of EWI installation would generally be as follows. So you would erect full scaffolding around the house, and the existing render finish should be checked to determine the condition and see whether any sections are loose. Any that are will be hacked off. You'll then brush down the full elevation and apply a fungicidal wash to that. And then areas where the existing render has been removed, you bring them level by using a render dubbing out coat. Then any pipes, cables, vents, flues, anything that goes through the wall will be extended out to make sure they're long enough to go through the new system. You would then fix insulation boards, normally around 90mm thick. They'll be mechanically fixed to the wall with U-beads provided around the perimeter. You then put aluminium oversills over the existing sills. That's to ensure that there's a sufficient drip detail over the new system. And then also where this thickness of the system takes it out from below the roof line, such as at the wall head detail below the gutters or at the dry verge detail in the gable, you would put an aluminium verge oversill, so similar detail to the windowsill, which takes the rainwater out over the new system, ensuring the integrity of it and keeping it watertight. So after the board's on, you then bed a fabric mesh into onto the system in a 3mm render base coat. And then the final layers is traditionally a 8 to 10mm coat of render, which is then dashed with an aggregate finish to provide a nice finish on it. So that final finish I mentioned there, that can vary, and it can be a different type of render, such as a smooth render, or you could have timber cladding or brick slips or any number of finishes. However, traditionally for residential properties, a dry dash render coating or smooth render coating is generally applied. And any new EWI system would likely come with a guarantee, which could be as long as 25 years.
Interesting. So for the listeners, how would I know if this is something that I would need for my property? And does it always only apply to residential properties?
Well, EWI can be installed to a variety of property types and is not only used in residential accommodation, it can also be used for multi-storey blocks, office buildings, commercial properties, as well as low-level flats and houses. So the vast majority of applications are for houses and flats, and that's generally due to the requirement for these properties to be energy efficient and comfortable for the occupant. Now, throughout the country, the type of housing stock varies dramatically. However, in general, the majority of older housing stock weren't constructed with thermal efficiency high on the priority list. So as such, there's this kind of legacy issue there where there's a significant number of homes that are poorly insulated and at times unsuitable for occupation. So the government have been working to remedy this problem with the introduction of regulations and targets that social landlords are required to meet, such as the Scottish Housing Quality Standard, also known as SHQS, which came into force in 2015, and that set a minimum standard for the energy efficiency of a property, as well as covering the suitability of other aspects of the property, such as the general condition of the building fabric and the safety and security of the property and its components. The latest regulations, they are the EIS 2 regs, which stands for the Energy Efficiency Standard for Social Housing, and that set even greater targets for landlords to bring their stock to an acceptable level. Now, the EIS 2 requires that no social housing property should be below an EPC band D by 2025, with a further milestone set for 2032, which then requires all social housing properties to achieve an EPC band B or be as energy efficient as practically possible within the limits of cost, technology and necessary consents. So the EWI can have a massive effect on the EPC rating, and it's not overly costly, especially when it's undertaken in line with cyclical component renewal of the external walls. In addition to the benefits in terms of the energy efficiency, there's also many other advantages from installing an external wall insulation system, such as reduced carbon emissions, can also stop condensation within the property. It helps prevent mold and fungus growth within the property. It also stops drafts and improves sound resistance. And it also protects and prolongs the external fabric of the property and provides an aesthetic appearance to the outside of the property. So in terms of a one-off property owner, often an EWI system would be installed when the external finish of the property is in disrepair and in need of renewal, as you would already have to have the requirement to erect access scaffolding and provide a new finish. Therefore, the only additional cost is really an inclusion of the insulation boards. And an added benefit as well is that these works are completely non-disruptive internally, and the house can continue to be occupied throughout the course of the works. There's also alternative methods of increasing the thermal efficiency of a house that begin to install internal wall insulation. However, that's quite disruptive work, and it also results in a slight decrease in the floor area internally.
So you mentioned some of the benefits there, and you said the costs tend to be kind of reasonable, but just to go over that again, what are the costs involved in it?
Well, there are several factors that would determine the cost of installing an external wall insulation system, such as the type of specification, whether it be a standard expanded polystyrene insulation board or a completely non-combustible mineral wool board.
Also, the specification of the render system or cladding to go on top of the board. And there's also economies of scales to consider. For example, if a housing association is undertaking a large scheme of renewals, they would expect a lower cost per unit than a one-off individual property owner looking to provide EWI to their house. And of course, the size of the property and any particular scaffolding requirements or difficulties, that would have a bearing on the cost also. So an approximate cost for installing a mineral wool board with a dry dash render system, which would come with a 25-year guarantee, based on a standard 3-bedroom semi-detached house, would be in the region of £9,000 to £12,000. Now, You would also notice a considerable saving in the fuel bills for the property going forward. You can expect to get savings of up to £400 per year following the installation of an EWI system. And in addition to the savings, as I mentioned before, there's also a resultant reduction in CO2 emissions, so it's also beneficial for the environment. One important thing to add though when looking at the costs is that you would require a building warrant for the installation of an EWI system, and that's to ensure that the system is specified and installed safely and complies with all current regulations, including the fire regulations. So Graham Sibbald have of course got an architectural department, so when instructed on EWI projects, we can take care of this aspect for our clients and provide them with a full in-house service.
Sounds like there's definitely lots of benefits to doing it. Are you currently involved in any projects relating to this topic, and how long do these processes usually take to complete?
Yeah, well, I've recently completed a large-scale project which included for the installation of a mineral wool external insulation system with a dry dash render coating. The project was for a housing association and covered 113 properties up in the northeast of Scotland that were generally falling below the standards set within the EISH regulations.
So as well as providing contract admin services for this commission, our in-house architectural department also obtained the building warrants for all of these properties. And in this particular instance, the project was actually coming in under budget, and the client was therefore able to add additional addresses to the scope, and we were able to fast track the additional building warrant submissions to ensure that all the relevant consents were in place prior to the works to the additional properties commencing, which therefore allowed us to add these to the project without the contractor having to leave site and then return to undertake the works at a later date, which then saved the client money on prelim costs. Now, due to the sheer scale of this project, it was on site for about 8 months. However, the time to do a standalone standard semi-detached property would take around 3 to 4 weeks to complete.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Andy, telling us all about external wall insulation and the installation techniques.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks again to Andy for his time today. For more information on the full range of services offered by Graham and Sibbald's building surveying teams across the UK, please go to www.g-s.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening today. Make sure to check out our other G&S podcasts on our YouTube channel. Stay safe, and we look forward to you joining us again next week.